For wrap-up member statements, the chair recognizes the right honourable member for Centerville.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Speaker, I'd wish to, on behalf of all colleagues present, to give our condolences to the wife of the Deputy Prime Minister for the passing of her mother, Mrs. Eugenia Austin, who was living with the Deputy Prime Minister at the time of her death. In fact, on Saturday, whilst the Deputy Prime Minister was in Cat Island, his wife came to pay a courtesy call on my wife and myself for our 39th wedding anniversary. And she was there saying that she wanted to stay with her mother and not go to Cat Island with the two kids and the Deputy Prime Minister for the regatta, because she wanted to be near her mother. And about 5 minutes after leaving my home, she called me back to say to me, I can't wake my mommy up. And she asked if I can get Dr. Gomez, and I called Dr. Gomez at home and asked him to go with me, because I knew the Deputy Prime Minister was in Cat Island. And we went to the house where she was an obviously very, very distraught child, was lying in the bed with her mother. And I thought on this occasion, what we did at the time was we knew the deputy wasn't there, so I spoke to him in Cat Island and stayed there during the wee hours of the morning, trying to give some comfort to her while the process of the body being taken over by the undertaker, the ambulance people came, and so forth, and all of the certifications. And so it was quite an experience, and he was absent, and so I don't know the burial arrangements, but she has passed, and we give our condolences. I'd also like to join those who have given condolences to Joan Roach. Father Roach, as leader of the Progressive Liberal Party, it's important for me to speak to a man who would have come from Barbados, who would have become Trinidad, who would have become as much a Bahamian as any one of us, who blended so easily into the community and was a great contributor. But God graced him with the opportunity to live long enough to see his children, his daughters, become major contributors to the country as well. One a teacher, another one became the first female director of works, Melanie, an engineer, another one working for the Ministry of Finance, and I think one of them, I said teacher?
Priest.
And one works for the Ministry of Finance. Works for the Ministry of Finance. So all contributors to public life when we wish. Sarah Forbes, I didn't have the opportunity to go to her funeral. I was traveling away, and but she was a great person. Her son, his name was called to me. He's a cardiologist in Freeport, and one who was first retained by Okeanos until they moved on to Dr. Saratopoulos. But Sarah was a great contributor, a very meaningful personality in Grand Bahama, one who represented herself well in the hotel industry, and one who will be long remembered not only for her charm, beauty, and grace, but for her contribution to the Progressive Liberal Liberal Party at a time when that support was needed in Grand Bahama, and where leadership she provided was needed. Zonica Wallace, I was shocked to learn about this young woman, 41 years of age, when I was told that the Member of Parliament for South Andros and the Deputy Prime Minister had visited her at her home where she was visiting with her mom in South Andros, and that she had terminal cancer, was terminally ill. And I did not see her before, but the family graciously invited me to speak at our homegoing. But it was another example, sir, that we do not know when, we do not know how, and we should govern our lives in such a way and it's really up to each of us to do so with a clear understanding that we are only here for a season, and when young people passes, that is as much evidence as you would need as to know that your number could be called when you least expect it to. We had a wonderful day today, sir, with the WNBA player. I want to just be able to say that because we don't do enough to lift up our heroes, and I think the Minister of Tourism, Member of Parliament for West End and Bimini, has said on so many occasions, Three Bells became Michael Thompson, a #1 draft pick, and the Bahamas doesn't know it, and we never gave him honor for it, sufficiently so. Rick Fox, who became later a Laker player, but also who was a Tar Heel, which indicates that not only is she a good basketball player, but at North Carolina University, they also emphasize the education. So she would probably have the level of intelligence and education that befits being the first Bahamian and having that honor to represent herself as the first Bahamian and set a standard for all the other Bahamians that will pass over. So on this side, I join in the congratulations. And finally, sir, I really wanted to speak about Greg Burrows, the senator. I've just heard for so many years people talk about this man. And one day, when his wife was seriously ill, I went to visit him at the baseball park, and he gave me a little talk. And I wanted to encourage him to see himself as a candidate. He didn't see himself then because his wife had a very serious health challenge. But later on, as we approached the general elections, he called me and told me he was willing to run. And then he told me he would take a seat that anyone would not expect him to win. And the courage that he demonstrated, the fidelity that he demonstrated, was so powerful and overwhelming to me that I've spoken about it on so many occasions. And when, Mr. Speaker, you go into a place like Freedom Park, and you see a man who is there contributing to these children, and he's not being paid, and you wonder why he's doing it. What motivates a man to do so much for so many young people sitting in the quietude of New Providence with nobody paying attention and no one putting him on a platform and no one congratulating and lauding him? And, it's a very special kind of person who does that. And I want to be able to ask colleagues, and let me say, sir, that prime ministers are placed in a position from time to time when they see obvious talent, but the talent is in the Senate. And the question is, how does he contribute on a national basis to that? How do you expand that? And so the obvious answer is, you give him a job in the Ministry of Sports and tell him, go and do it. And then the question comes of whether the protocol allows it to happen, whether the fact that he's been given the privilege of being a senator, because of the things he accomplished, should stop him from being able to further that contribution by going into the islands of the Bahamas and creating this level of discipline and endeavor for young people that will forever mark their life and lay a foundation upon which they could build. And I'm bothered, okay, when I look and I see him and I know for whatever reason that proposition by me is not fulfilled. And so the question is, when? Now. That's what it should be. Now. And to not apologize for it, sir. Right? He earned being a senator. He happens to be a PLP appointed senator. But he's a decent man, a good man, one who is a model citizen of this country, one who sets an example for it. And I only know him in that limited capacity. I know his mother well, I know his brothers well, even his sisters. But he is deserving of having the opportunity, and the country will be enriched by our giving him that opportunity, Minister of Sports, to allow him and enable him immediately to be brought in by the Ministry of Sports and paid for the job. So, Mr. Speaker, I thank you. And then, sir, finally, Ansel Saunders. Ansel Saunders, sir, is the man who, history will have it, took Dr. Martin Luther King into the mangroves of Bimini, and who is the witness to Dr. Martin Luther King talking about the draft he was doing for the Nobel Peace Prize award that he got. And he was in the mangroves, and the story goes that Dr. King, looking at the pristine environment in Bimini, surrounded by the mangroves of Bimini, the fish, the birds, said, how could anyone doubt that there is a God? How can anyone doubt that there is a God when you are sitting in this God-created place of Bimini? And he's 82 years of age, a very articulate man. And when the member of parliament told me, and I have since confirmed, that Colin Howe of Genting went to his house and asked him how many boats he could build in a year. And he said 3. And they said, well, we now commission you to build 3 boats on the condition that you'll gather around you a number of young men who you could transfer the technology of boat building to. And the developer did that. And he agreed. And the story is such a wonderful story of someone in the twilight of his life who has the skill of building boats, being empowered by an investor not just to build a boat for them, but to build 3 boats so as to ensure that the skills he has can be imparted to those young men who will be chosen. And I'm going to ask the minister responsible for the training agency to ensure that the training agency becomes an integral part of that so that we could really make sure that happens. And finally, sir, Mrs. Lottie Tynes. My mother was a nurse, and Mrs. Lottie Tynes' life is legendary, literally legendary, for her contribution to the Red Cross in this country, for her contribution to development and expansion of our humanity as a country, for Christian charity, symbolizing all of the things that are good and decent about our people and their willingness to give, their willingness to identify. And she was married to a man who was the godfather of either my wife or her sister, the father of Maurice Tynes, a friend of my father-in-law, and another Bahamian of note. And I want us to recognize to all of us who've had mothers who have passed that father's exception, there's only one mother, only one. And to those of us who still have mothers who are alive, you know, treasure those mothers because there's only one. And that when they do pass, you will forever remember them for the love and the encouragement and the stimulation and for the disposition of values to you. And it becomes so strong as you get older. And so I know what Maurice is going through because he had that kind of mother. And you know, as we get older, we become more sentimental and appreciative of the life we've had. And it tells me that in our country, and this is why I'm so motivated in this term, that in our country there are children without mothers. There are children without fathers. There are children who need the intervention of the state. And but for the intervention of the state, they will not have any kind of life and could become a menace to themselves and society. And that is why when we have the occasion like this to salute a woman like Lottie Tynes, to salute a woman like Joan Roach, to salute a woman like Sarah Forbes, it is well done. And we say to them, well done, faithful servant. Do well. Rest in peace.
Thank you, Right Honorable Member.